What would you think if I told you that the most dangerous man in the room is not the loudest one, but the one who says nothing and watches everything? His silence is not absence. It is presence in its most concentrated form. He does not speak because he seeks not to convince, but to understand. He watches not with suspicion, but with awareness, total, merciless awareness. And in that gaze lies the weight of centuries, of battles fought not on fields, but within the soul. This is the kind of man Marcus Aurelius understood, not the performative alpha, not the man with a crown, but no command of himself, but the man forged in fire and solitude, one who has faced the abyss of his own nature and returned not unscarred, but unbroken. A man who rules not with wrath, but with restraint, who knows that power without principle is cowardice disguised as dominance. You've seen him, haven't you? At the edge of the room, undistracted, unmoved. While others scramble for attention, he remains still. While others reach outward for validation, he reaches inward for truth. And you wonder, what does he see? What does he know that others don't? He knows this. The chaos outside is nothing compared to the chaos within. And until a man governs himself, he will forever be a slave, no matter how loud his voice or high his throne. Marcus wrote in his meditations, not for the world, but for himself, because he knew the most important dialogue is the one you hold in silence, when the noise dies down, and all that's left is your reflection staring back. He wrote not to be remembered, but to remember that death is near, that control is an illusion, and that virtue is the only true possession. The modern man has forgotten this, drowning in distractions, seduced by applause, addicted to the illusion that noise equals meaning. He fears silence, because in silence, the mask slips. And behind the mask, there is weakness, there is pain, there is the boy who was never enough, the man who feels like an imposter in his own skin. But the one who says nothing, he is not hiding, he is enduring. He has faced his shadow and lived to tell the tale, though he never will, because what needs to be proven no longer needs to be spoken. He has buried his ego in the soil of humility, and now something deeper grows, something rooted in discipline, stillness, and sacred detachment. You can feel it when you're near him, that gravitational pull, that unsettling sense that he sees through your words, your gestures, your posturing. He has no need to expose you. You are already exposed in his presence. Because when a man becomes a mirror, everyone reveals themselves. This is the archetype of the Stoic. Not cold, but composed. Not distant, but discerning. He does not avoid feeling. He transcends it. He does not run from pain. He absorbs it, learns from it, transmutes it into wisdom. What wounds others destroys their clarity. What wounds him sharpens his insight. He does not retaliate when insulted, not because he is weak, but because he sees the attacker for what he is, a man at war with himself, desperate to wound others so he can momentarily forget his own bleeding. Marcus wrote, "When you are offended at any man's fault, turn to yourself and study your own failings. Then you will forget your anger, not out of moral posturing, but because anger clouds the eye, and clarity is everything to the man who watches. What does he see, this man of silence? He sees how people betray themselves with every word they speak to impress. He sees the desperation in smiles that stretch too wide, the fear in laughter that comes too quickly. He sees the child behind the cynic, the lover behind the seducer, the grief behind the arrogance. And what about you? When he looks at you, what does he see? He sees all the masks you've worn to be loved, the persona you crafted to be accepted, the voice you borrowed because you didn't trust your own. And beneath all that, he sees your hunger for something real, for stillness, for worthiness not tied to performance, for the courage to exist without pretense. But you've been taught to fear that silence. You've been trained to entertain, to explain, to apologize for your depth. You've been told that stillness is weakness, that watching is passive, that unless you are loud, you are invisible. Yet here he is, proving them wrong with every breath, existing in defiance of the noise, not needing the world to validate his truth, and that unsettles people. Because when one man no longer plays the game, he reveals the game for what it is. He walks through the world untouched by its hysteria, not because he does not care, but because he has seen through the veil. He knows that everything external is borrowed time, status, wealth, fame, even love. If it is not rooted in truth, will fade. Only the self remains. The self not built by others' expectations, but carved through trial and solitude. This is the man who says nothing and watches everything. His presence is not loud, but it lingers, it haunts, it challenges you in ways no words ever could. Because in that quiet observation, in that refusal to validate the false, you are confronted, not by him, but by yourself. By the parts of you that crave to be seen, yet are terrified of being known. And he knows. Without asking, without intruding, he knows. Because he has sat long enough in his own darkness to recognize yours. The man who says nothing has already bled behind closed doors, in rooms where no one came to save him. He has learned the rhythm of his own suffering, the architecture of his inner collapse. And from that ruin, he has rebuilt, not a facade, but a foundation. There is something terrifying about a man who no longer needs the world to confirm his existence. He does not plead to be loved, nor flinch at being misunderstood. He is not seduced by applause, nor broken by silence, because once you have stood alone before your own emptiness and not turned away, the world loses its power to manipulate you. This is why the world fears him, because he cannot be bought. He cannot be swayed. He cannot be flattered into submission or shamed into obedience. He is sovereign, and sovereignty in a world built on dependence is heresy. The Stoics knew this long before the vocabulary of trauma, self-worth, or individuation existed. They understood that freedom was not circumstantial, it was internal. That to govern one's thoughts, one's reactions, one's inner state was the ultimate form of empire. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome, wielded armies, ruled nations, yet he feared most the insurrection within. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. But strength is not always masculine in the way the world sells it. This man holds not the brittle strength of domination, but the supple, enduring strength of restraint. He knows that yelling is easy, but silence, intentional, conscious silence, is strength honed by pain. He has unlearned the myths of masculinity that prize aggression over wisdom, conquest over clarity. He has met his shadow, the wounded child, the rejected lover, the angry son, and rather than exiling them, he has brought them home. This is what it means to integrate, to become whole, to see every broken fragment as a doorway, not a defect. And in doing so, he has become not perfect, but real. Most cannot bear his silence because it reflects the noise within themselves. Most will misread him, call him cold, call him arrogant, call him aloof. But these are projections. shadows cast by those who have not yet met themselves in full. He is not cold. He is exacting. He is not arrogant. He is sovereign. He is not aloof. He is discerning. You don't notice it at first, but the way he listens is unlike anyone else. It's not just that he hears your words. He absorbs them, weighs them, measures them against the silences between them, because he has trained himself to hear not just what is said, but what is withheld. And when he does speak, it is not to fill space or impress, but to clarify, to realign, sometimes with a sentence, sometimes with a glance. Because to a man like this, words are tools, not toys. Every phrase is chosen with surgical precision, not to manipulate, but to reveal. He may ask you a question that leaves you hollow for days, not because it was cruel, but because it pointed to the lie you were telling yourself. Because in his presence, you cannot hide. Not behind intellect, not behind charm, not even behind pain. You see, he has made a temple out of solitude, a sanctuary within himself, and so he no longer enters a room seeking something. He brings something, and whether you recognize it or recoil from it, that is your test, not his. Because this man has already been tested by life, by betrayal, by loss, by the slow disintegration of who he thought he was. And what emerged from that crucible was not someone new, but someone true. He walks the world as a mirror, and most cannot bear to look. But some will be drawn to it, not because it flatters them, but because it calls them to shed the masks, to do the work, to find the same silence in themselves, the kind that is not empty, but full, the kind that no longer waits to be understood because it has made peace with being alone. The man who says nothing does not need to be heard because he already sees everything. There is a paradox in his silence. It is louder than most voices. It hums with something ancient, something elemental. It is the silence of mountains, of oceans, of stars, a silence not born of avoidance, but of arrival. He is not retreating from life. He has stepped deeper into it than most would dare. He no longer reacts. He responds, deliberately, precisely, from the core, not the wound, because he has stood in the fire of his own disappointments long enough to stop fearing it. And that fire, rather than consume him, has refined him. When Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Be like the rock against which the waves continually crash," he was not romanticizing emotional suppression. He was naming the highest form of inner mastery, the refusal to be governed by the whims of circumstance. He was speaking of a man who has chosen discipline over indulgence, essence over performance, being over becoming. To become such a man is not to become invulnerable, but to stop collapsing every time the world doesn't applaud you. It is to no longer rely on external noise to define internal truth. And in that detachment lies liberation, because he no longer needs to win arguments. He no longer fights for attention. He no longer postures for worthiness. He has nothing to prove, not because he believes he is better, but because he finally knows he is enough. This kind of man terrifies those who have built their value on being seen. He is the ghost at the banquet, the reminder that peace does not live in performance. That attention is not affection. That validation is a drug, and he is clean. He walks through crowds like a myth, not hidden, but untouchable. Not because he resists intimacy, but because he refuses to dilute himself to be palatable. He would rather be misunderstood in truth than loved in illusion. You've met men who talk of power. He embodies it, not through dominance, through direction, not through intimidation, through intention, not through control. through calm. In the Jungian shadow, there is a figure known as the Senex, the wise old man. He is not necessarily aged, but seasoned, a soul who has faced the tension between who he pretended to be and who he truly is, and in facing that chasm, has built a bridge, brick by brutal brick. This man you sense, the one who watches everything, is that bridge between the wounded boy and the integrated man, between the chaos of emotion and the clarity of purpose, between shadow and light. He has welcomed the parts of himself that others were taught to banish, the rage, the grief, the shame, and rather than exiling them, he sat with them. And in that sitting, something shifted. They no longer controlled him. They began to inform him. That is the secret the world hides from you. When you face your shadow, it doesn't destroy you. It frees you. And so he walks with the calm of a man who knows his demons and holds their leashes. He may never raise his voice, but he will stop a room. He may never explain himself, but he will be understood in ways that go beyond language, because energy does not lie, and the energy of a man who is whole cannot be faked, only felt. When he looks at you, it is not with desire to possess, but to perceive, to witness what you hide even from yourself. And in that witnessing, you may feel exposed, but never unsafe, because his gaze does not seek to conquer, it seeks to understand, and understanding is the rarest form of love. The woman who encounters him may at first feel unnerved. He does not flatter, he does not chase, he does not collapse into approval. He simply sees, and in that seeing, if she has not yet met herself, she may run. Because once you've been truly seen, you can never again settle for being looked at. He is not for everyone, nor does he try to be. He belongs to the stillness, to the wind moving through tall trees, to the deep pause before the truth is spoken, to the soul of the world that remembers what it means to be undistracted, undivided, unshaken. And if you too are quiet enough, if you are still long enough, you might feel him near, not watching to judge, not watching to possess, but watching, because he has already learned that in seeing the world clearly, he sees himself more clearly too. And that, perhaps, is the most dangerous power of all. He did not become this way by accident. No man is born into stillness. He earns it. He is forged, not found. What you see, his calm, his detachment, his unwavering focus, is the aftermath of war, not with others, but with himself. This is the man who has buried versions of himself, loud ones, proud ones, desperate ones, versions that clung to applause, that mistook chaos for passion, that whispered, maybe if I try harder, they'll love me. But that man is dead now. And in his place stands someone who knows that true worth is not conditional. It does not rise and fall with the moods of others. It is sovereign, and it is silent. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, but he spent his nights alone with ink and parchment, wrestling with the same ghosts that haunt you now. Do not waste what remains of your life in speculating about others, he wrote. Be concerned only with how you can be the best version of yourself. The man who watches lives by this creed. He is not distracted by gossip, performance, or spectacle. He is too busy observing what matters, the patterns, the pain, the subtle reveals in people's eyes when they think no one is watching. And it's not judgment that drives him. It's discernment. The kind that comes from watching his own soul under the same brutal microscope. He has seen his own pettiness, his envy, his hunger for control. He has confessed it without ceremony and stripped it of its power. He has made peace with being flawed, but not with staying that way. So he walks now with quiet authority, not because he controls others, but because he governs himself. And that is the rarest form of leadership. You can feel it when he enters a space. The air changes, the masks feel heavier. The truth rises to the surface, uninvited, because his presence demands alignment, not through intimidation, but through frequency. He speaks little because he understands the power of words. He knows that language is not a shield, it is a sword. And swords, if swung carelessly, cut the wrong things. He does not speak to be clever, he speaks to be clear. Every silence he offers is an invitation for you to look inward, for you to pause before reacting, for you to question what part of you needs to be loud, just to feel real. And if you're brave enough, you'll feel the pull. Not toward him, but toward yourself, the real you, the one beneath the roles, the trauma, the hustle, the one you've ignored in your pursuit to be liked. That's what makes him dangerous. He doesn't validate the mask. He makes you want to take it off. He does not force transformation. He catalyzes it. Women are drawn to him, but not always for the reasons they expect. He doesn't offer the usual games. No flattery, no persuasion, no promises. He offers presence. And for those who have only known conditional attention, it can feel like standing naked in the sun. He listens not just with his ears, but with his nervous system. He listens to the way your tone tightens when you lie to yourself, to the way your smile flickers when you feel unseen. He listens for the rupture beneath the story, and he doesn't flinch when he finds it. But this is not romance. It is initiation. He is not here to save anyone. He is here to see. And in a world built on illusions, being seen is the first step toward becoming real. You wonder how he became like this. The truth? He broke over and over. And each time, he did not rush to rebuild. He sat in the rubble. He examined each shattered piece. He asked it what it needed, what it meant, why it failed. And slowly, from that sacred wreckage, he built something unshakable. Not a persona, a presence. This is why he doesn't fear being misunderstood, why he doesn't seek constant validation. He's walked through fire that burned away the addiction to being liked. And in its place, he found something far more rare: self-respect. Not the arrogant kind, the quiet kind, the kind that allows a man to walk away from anything that costs him his peace, the kind that does not bargain for belonging. So when you see him watching, know this: he is not measuring others. He is measuring himself, his reactions, his integrity, his alignment, because every moment is a mirror, and he is too devoted to his own evolution to look away. And maybe, just maybe, he is waiting for someone else to meet him there, not to speak, not to impress, but to see. There is a kind of loneliness that only the awakened know, not the loneliness of isolation, but of altitude, of standing where the air is thin, where fewer souls can breathe. The man who says nothing and watches everything lives there, not because he is superior, but because he chose the path few are willing to walk. He has tasted the easy love that comes with performance and rejected it. He has known the rush of attention and realized its emptiness. He has stood in rooms full of noise and felt completely alone, and finally understood that true connection does not come from being seen, but from being known. And to be known, you must first know yourself. That is his obsession, not success, not conquest, but alignment. The sacred, brutal act of holding every piece of himself accountable, of calling out the lies within before he dares to name them in others. He holds a kind of masculine energy that is nearly extinct in the modern age, one that does not bark orders or seek obedience, but rather cultivates direction, vision, stillness. He is the antidote to chaos, not because he controls the world, but because he refuses to be ruled by it, and that refusal costs him. It costs him easy relationships. It costs him approval. It costs him invitations to dance in the circus of modern life, where everyone is trying to outshine the other in a race that leads nowhere. But what he gains in return is something no applause can buy: a core. He walks with it like a spine made of flame. You can feel it in his posture, in the pauses between his words, in the way he can hold space for truth without shrinking or running. His body may be still, but his presence roars. He is not passive. He is potent. Because the man who watches knows that everything people reveal about themselves is in what they think they're hiding. The flicker of a glance, the tightening of a jaw, the fake laugh that comes too fast. He sees it all, not to manipulate, but to understand, and to discern who is worth opening to. His boundaries are not walls, they are thresholds. To enter, one must be honest, not perfect, not impressive, but real. That is the only currency he respects: authenticity earned through shadow work. To the uninitiated, he may seem distant, detached, cold. But this is projection, because most people associate warmth with availability, and he is not available to everyone. His time is guarded, his energy is sacred, his attention is earned, not because he plays games, but because he has learned, often the hard way, that not every open heart deserves access to his. There was a time long ago when he gave too much, when he offered his depth to those who only knew how to skim the surface. He paid for it with betrayal, with disillusionment, with long nights wondering why being real felt like punishment. But he no longer asks why. He knows now. Most people fear what they haven't faced within themselves. And when a man shows up with the weight of presence, with the steadiness of someone who doesn't flinch, it activates the parts in others that still tremble. And yet, this is his purpose: not to soothe, not to save, but to stand, to be the still point in a spinning world, to be the quiet one who knows, to be the reminder, subtle and fierce, that there is another way to live, one not built on reaction, but on revelation. He doesn't announce his values, he embodies them. He doesn't correct others, he models integrity. He doesn't chase chaos, he chooses peace and lets the rest burn if it must. So what becomes of a man like this? He becomes a myth to the shallow, a mirror to the wounded, and a magnet to the awakened. But here is the final secret: he does not watch to judge, he watches to witness, because he knows that behind every mask is a story, and behind every story, a soul longing to be free. And if you meet him with your truth, naked, unperformed, trembling but real, he will not turn away. He will see you, fully, finally. And maybe, just maybe, you'll realize that you have been watching him too, not with your eyes, but with your soul. And what you've seen is not just him. You've seen the man you could become, if only you had the courage to sit in silence long enough to meet yourself. What happens to a man who no longer fears the silence? What becomes of him when he no longer flinches at the absence of praise, when he no longer bends beneath the need to belong? He becomes untouchable, not by force, but by truth. Not the truth handed down from others, not inherited truths or adopted beliefs, but the kind of truth you can only discover in the hollow of your own chest when the world has gone quiet and all that remains is your breath, your regret, your desire to be whole. He has learned that there are two kinds of silence, the silence of avoidance and the silence of power. Most flee from the first. He lives in the second. This silence is not the absence of words. It is the presence of depth. It's the space where clarity is born, where projection dies, where the false self cannot survive. In this silence, he does not seek to be understood. He seeks to understand. He studies not just people, but patterns. Why they say one thing and do another. Why they cling to pain and call it love. Why they reject truth and call it too intense. He watches because he has watched himself do the same. He knows all the roles, the pleaser, the performer, the protector. He played them all once, until he realized that each was a way of avoiding the one thing he truly feared, being seen, fully, without defense. And so, he turned inward, slowly, brutally. He peeled back every layer until there was nothing left to hide behind. And there, in the quiet, he met himself, not the version the world applauded, the raw one, the broken one, the one who had been waiting all along. It was that man, the one no one else ever met, that he finally chose to become. And now, you feel it, don't you? The gravity of him, not because he demands your attention, but because he doesn't need it, not because he performs strength, but because he is strength, earned, not worn like a costume. He does not argue. He does not defend. He does not try to make you see him in a certain light, because he has given up the addiction to image. And when a man gives that up, you cannot control him. You cannot seduce him with flattery, nor threaten him with exile. He is already free. And that freedom, the one born of inner ownership, of confronting every fear and choosing alignment over approval, it radiates from him like heat, unspoken, undeniable. To many, this man will remain a mystery, because they are still chasing what he has buried, still performing what he has unlearned, still externalizing what he has integrated. But for those who have begun their own descent into the self, for those who know the sting of betrayal, the ache of loneliness, the hunger for something real, his presence is a revelation. He is the embodiment of what becomes possible when you stop outsourcing your worth. You will not hear him declare his boundaries. They are etched into his being. You will not see him boast of his wounds. They are stitched with silence and wisdom. You will not watch him chase what does not align. He would rather lose what is easy than betray what is true. And in a world of men who shout, posture, and perform, the one who says nothing, who watches with calm, holy precision, is the one you never forget. He reminds you of something you had buried, the voice beneath the noise, the clarity beneath the confusion, the truth that does not scream, but waits, like a flame behind your ribs, steady and soft, saying, "You are not here to impress. You are here to become." And that becoming is not loud. It is slow, private, merciless. It requires losing everything you thought you had to be. It demands standing naked before your own soul and not turning away. He has done it. And that's why he no longer runs, no longer hides, no longer performs. He simply is. And that, in the end, is the highest form of power. Presence without pretense, stillness without suppression, awareness without attachment. So, let them call him cold. Let them call him distant. He knows the truth. He has met himself in the dark and come out watching. There is nothing left to chase. No status, no spotlight, no savior. The man who says nothing has burned through the need for recognition, like fog under the morning sun. What remains is not hollow. It is holy. A stillness that hums with the weight of things no longer carried. You see it in his eyes, not the emptiness of withdrawal, but the fullness of self-possession. There's no reaching, no grasping, no pretending. Just presence. And in that presence is something most have never felt before: safety. Not the kind that wraps you in comfort and enables your illusions, but the kind that strips away your defenses and whispers, "You are enough, even now." It is this kind of man who doesn't flinch when people leave, because he no longer bargains for love with the currency of self-betrayal. He has stopped negotiating his worth. He no longer fears rejection, because he has chosen himself again and again, when no one else did. This is not arrogance. It is rootedness. He is not floating in ideals or fantasies. He has planted himself in what is real, and that includes his pain. You see, the modern world worships healing, but runs from grief. It romanticizes growth, but avoids the grave. But he has buried his false selves with ritual, with reverence. He has mourned the masks that once kept him safe. He has sat in the ruins long enough to hear the wisdom echo back. You must lose what you are not to become what you are. He has stopped reacting to everything that threatens his ego, because his ego is no longer in charge. It serves, but does not lead. He leads now, with conscience, with clarity, with a calm that cannot be faked. He no longer seeks to be understood by the many. He knows that the deep are often misread by the shallow, and so he speaks less, observes more. He does not interrupt others' illusions. He lets them speak, because words are windows, and he knows that most people reveal everything when given enough silence. His relationships are few, but sacred. He does not invite chaos to his table. He is not interested in potential. He listens for patterns, and if the energy does not honor his peace, he will walk, without anger, without explanation. He has become a gatekeeper of his own soul. And this is why women of depth are drawn to him, not because he fills them, but because he does not empty himself to be chosen. He does not fix. He does not save. He sees. And in that seeing, the right woman feels something rare. She is safe to be whole, safe to be soft and wild, seen not just for her beauty, but for her becoming. Because this man does not fear the feminine, he reveres her. He knows she is not a prize to win, but a force to meet, with presence, not performance. And when they meet, truly meet, it is not chemistry. It is recognition, a remembering of who they were before the world told them who to be. But even then, even in love, he remains complete, because he knows no one can complete him. He brings fullness to the table, not hunger. And that's why his love doesn't consume, it liberates. He does not fear solitude. Solitude has been his crucible. It has taught him discernment. It has taught him grace. It has taught him to listen to the sound beneath sound, the whisper of the soul, the throb of truth. And now, he moves through life like a shadow in sunlight. Quiet, clear, grounded. He needs no spotlight. He has become the flame. So if you find yourself in his presence, and you wonder why your words catch in your throat, why your heartbeat slows, why your mask suddenly feels too heavy, it is because you are in the presence of a man who no longer lies to himself. And in that presence, there is no space for your lies either. He will not call them out. He will not challenge you. He will simply see you. And that is more terrifying than any confrontation, but also more freeing than any embrace. Because if you let him, he will remind you that the truth was never too much, that your stillness is not weakness, that your worth was never up for debate. And as you watch him walk away, unbothered, unburdened, you will understand something your soul has always known.